Welcome to the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. My name is Michelle Hartwig, and I am your host. I am also race director of many Midwest trail races like Kettle Moraine 100, Hennepin 100, and the Midwest States 100 coming in 2021. My co-host tonight is Coach Loretta. Crystal the Pistol is at work. She's a teacher, and she needed to work a little later today than expected. So thank you, Coach Loretta, for sitting in.
Hey, thanks for having me tonight.
And our guest tonight is Nicole Kerneen, and she's a certified dietitian and has a really great podcast called Between Two Pastries with Annie Weiss. And we've had Annie on the show before, and we're so excited to have Nicole. Welcome to the show.
Yay, thank you. Hello. Good to be here. It's so fun.
Yeah, how are you dealing with storms? Like we both Loretta up in Michigan and us here in Crystal Lake, like it's tornado warning.
Yeah, so we are under a tornado warning right now. And like before the show, there was so much lightning that I was like, oh my gosh, let's hope that, we don't lose power like, in between, in the middle of the show. So right now it's just raining. It's not totally storming. So maybe we're kind of in this nice little protected section because we're close enough to the lake that sometimes we don't get hit as bad. So We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same here. It seems like it hits really hard north of us and really hard south, but it got really bad for a little bit before it started. But if we black out, everybody that's watching, you guys know why, and hopefully we're okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But anyways, we wanted to talk about you and a dietitian and what that is. I think that would be a great place to start because I think that there's some confusion in that when people are looking.
Yeah. So, and where do you find the confusion, just so I can cover what you're thinking?
Well, I think that, I know that there's dietitian and nutrition, so that's one right off the bat.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So you're a dietitian. What's the difference?
So the short answer is that a dietitian has a degree and a nutritionist doesn't. So a dietitian goes through very extensive schooling. We have internships, several different types of internships that we have to do. Either it's a coordinated program within the schooling, or we have to seek out those internships after we've achieved our undergrad. And then we go on from there to also focus in on whatever we want to specialize on. So it's a really comprehensive program because we're looking at all aspects of nutrition, as far as health, as far as disease, as far as life cycles. We're looking at everything. And so it's really great because we have that ability to really take anybody and look at all of these different, factors for them to really find out what's going on for them, or what's going to be a good, mix for them with whatever it is they're coming to us for. So.
Oh, that's great. That's really super interesting. And what do you specialize in?
So I've always specialized in general with disordered eating disorders, because they're one of the same and different. Okay. Like an eating disorder is an actual diagnoses, let's say, but there's also a lot of disordered eating out there too that doesn't necessarily have a diagnosis attached to it. So my whole big thing was always behavior around food, relationship with food. But then I've also had a focus as well on sports nutrition. That's always been a really high piece for me too. I've always worked with athletes basically from before day one, because I was actually working even while I was going to school at a health club as well. And, they were having me dabble a little bit. I knew where my limits were as far as, providing advice, but it was easy enough for me just to at least provide minor guidance that I know wouldn't hurt anybody. But even as I was going through school, I've always just been in the athletic realm, if you will, and always just love helping that community.
Yeah, I think that as an athlete, feeding, fueling our body is so important. Like what, can you talk a little bit about like, what your approach is of working with an athlete, and like if somebody was going to call you up to work with you, like what goes through on that?
Yeah. So it's different for everybody. Just have to throw that out there. It's completely different for everybody, just in general. But when I'm focusing primarily on the athlete itself, there's a lot of things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at what their training schedule is. I need to know what their wake and sleep schedule is like. I need to know if they're currently taking, medications, or if they're taking any supplements. And with the supplements, if they know why they're taking them. And that's a really big piece, because so many people just say, well, I heard this was helpful, or I heard that, and people are taking stuff, but they don't you know what I mean? They don't really, and again, it's not, it's not like that's a bad thing per se, but I always like to know, like, what's their understanding of why they're taking this. And we also look at the timing of when they're taking it too, because that's also super important. And people don't realize that sometimes they're not absorbing fully when they're taking it, with certain things or away from certain things or whatever. So we're looking at that type of thing too. And ultimately, we're also finding out what their goals are, what they've sort of struggled with in the past, how they've done things in the past, A, what has worked for them, and B, what has felt really bad. And so we kind of throw all that together, and we start and we begin. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to make sure, well, Coach Loretta, I know, has worked with you, so I want to make sure if you have a question to pop in
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
sure. So I guess I'd expand a little. When we talk about athletes, you talk about not only eating outside of the run, but actually in the activity. You focus on that too a little bit. Can you share a little bit about that?
Correct. So, when we're looking at like a typical day, and that's sort of, that question piece of what, when you eat, how much you're eating, and how your training kind of falls around that as well, and looking at the timing of that, because that's so important. So we're looking at everything, because people have to realize, and athletes in particular need to realize, and this is the other thing too, is like so many people are like, oh, but this is easy for me. I don't think of myself as an athlete. And it's like, yeah. You're an athlete. Congratulations, And so you have to really take that, seriously in general. You're imposing a lot of stress on your body. So you have to, how do we help support it in what it's trying to do? So we have to look at what we're eating at every interval in general. And we have to realize that as athletes, we are always recovering. We're always recovering. Yes, we're fueling for the event, but we're recovering before we start fueling for the event. I mean, it's like, that's what we're ultimately doing. And then we're also looking at trying to, how do we then manage the inflammation piece, when we're training really hard, or there's not a lot of, turnover, I should say, of rest time and stuff. So we're looking at all those things.
And then also during the event itself.
Absolutely, during the event. So before, during, after, the in-betweens, we're looking at every piece of it. Definitely.
Yeah, Connie Nunham was asking about people that struggle with food sensitivities. Do you got any input on that?
Yeah, so I feel like that's kind of a broad subject. So when this individual asks about food sensitivities, I'm kind of wondering if she has food allergies, or if she thinks she's sort of sensitive to certain things. But that's a big part of what I do in my practice too. So I also focus so much on GI, hormone health, endocrine things, as well as the allergy piece, because sometimes they all come together. They're all wrapped up in the same. So when people say that they have food sensitivities, sometimes it's not actually food sensitivity. Like, the thing is that the food is kind of presenting the symptom to the thing that we have to discover. So it's really interesting, but most people want to sort of just blame food as well, that has to be the problem, and sometimes it is. sometimes it really isn't, so we've got to look at it we've got to kind of layer it. It comes in layers, um but yeah, I mean, food sensitivity is kind of a really hot thing right now too, and we have to be careful with some of the tests that you can find out there. In fact, Annie and I actually did a pod not that long ago about that as well, just being really careful about that stuff. So
Yeah, so that sounds like it's not an
no,
easy answer at all. Okay,
no.
she says, "Wow, what a different way to look at things." Is
Oh
actually she
yeah,
ended up
cool,
responding. So yeah,
cool.
if she has issues, it
I
sounds like
love
there's
it.
a lot of steps to go through to kind of figure out where it's coming from.
There really, really is, and I know people just kind of want like, just tell me the one thing. So it doesn't, but we all want that, but it just doesn't work that way. There's so much more to it. So yeah, great.
Yeah. Uh,
Mhm.
I can, there's so many fad diets out there, and I like, and some of them, like, people just, I actually, I'm thinking that they're fads, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they become mainstream. But like, how does somebody tell the difference between something that's working for somebody, or like, what's the
Yeah.
right way to eat? Do any of those work? I guess I'm a little all over in the question, and I just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings at it, but I'm just confused because there's some stuff that, like, people are just swearing by, but to me, I look at it and it seems a little fad diet ish.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's pretty great. And so if you don't mind me asking, I love kind of hearing how you worded that, that it seems fad diet-ish to you. So can you give me an example of, and you don't have to like, talk about anything specific, but what would make you feel that way or think
Well,
that?
intermittent
Yeah.
fasting is, I mean, there's people, and I completely trust some of the people that have told me, like, their energy level is higher.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, but, like, I don't know, like, we've learned since grade school, how we're supposed to eat. And this is also, I don't know, it just feels like it came up in the last year, and maybe it came up before. And then also, the all meat and the high protein
Right,
looks delicious to me.
right.
And
And so,
but I just
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I think that's a great question. It's a big question to kind of unpack. So, really, when you're looking at what is a fad diet, really, if something has a lot of rules to it, if you're eliminating, food groups, that type of thing, those are kind of your big ones right there. If there's a lot of restriction that's involved too, calorie restriction or any energy restriction on any level, that's another thing as well. If there is, say, I'm thinking of like the Whole 30 thing. Again, that's another thing that's a little upsetting because there's like a lot of these will have like phases that you go through, so like for a week you're not eating anything and you're just drinking stuff, and it's like that. Yes, that isn't what we want to be doing in general. In general, so the thing about it is that a body loves consistency, period. And so it gets more stressed out when we jump from one thing to another versus just eating regularly. um, to get back to, and again, there's enough studies on all of these to know, and there have been numerous, and I love these kinds of studies. There's been numerous studies in regards to these fads, and they have short-term results, but when compared to eating, just kind of regularly, and I wouldn't even say calorie restricted, but eating just regularly, what we find is that at the end of, say, a year, that both ways of eating came to the same result. And what happens then is that usually, though, with this fad piece, people are so tired of doing that particular thing and not eating the things that they love, that all of a sudden they start eating the things they love again. And then because of the different hormones that got disrupted when they were doing this other thing, they start not feeling well, or they start, unfortunately putting weight on. I mean, most of the time people are doing fad diets because of a weight loss thing than anything else. And then that in turn becomes another issue. Now you're dealing with, especially with these high protein things, now you're dealing with insulin resistance. And that can also happen with like any of like the paleo thing. Again, paleo isn't even a real thing. Yeah, so anything like that. So it's so important that we remember that we need a variety of food in our day for so many different reasons. But nutritionally, on a lot of reasons. I just did, Annie and I just did a presentation on the microbiome last night, and that was something that was so important. When you remove an entire food group, all of a sudden now your gut doesn't have the ability to produce that enzyme anymore to break down that particular substance. That's going to be a problem, because you're going to need to take in that substance at some point. And then when you do, it's going to feel like a brick in your stomach because you can't do it anymore. And so when we were talking about gut health in general, that's sort of the issue when we take out carbohydrate completely or anything like that. In particular, carbohydrate has so many nutrients in it that we need that to feed good bacteria. So there's an issue when we're removing things in general, or when we're going too long without food. That's a whole nother topic. IF is a whole nother topic. I can touch on it if you want, but I'm just saying, like, it's a whole nother topic.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know. I think that a good place to go is, like, I don't know. What do you think, Loretta? Like, just what is a good basic, like science way for, simple way for people to eat, because we've got people in here listening, and, they're listening to, all these different ways. Like, what is your philosophy of eating?
So again, it's still all about the person. So we have to work with how that person kind of lives and breathes. Also what they like. And sure, are there times where we have to kind of alter, what they like? I mean, obviously I don't want people eating French fries for 4 meals in a day, I mean, just logical stuff, but there isn't anything that we can't do. And that's kind of important to understand too. So, basic philosophy in general. And again, it's not one way for everybody. So you're always tweaking things for people in general. And when we're working with an athlete, that's so different. So typically, I like when my clients kind of stop eating at dinner and not eat till about 12 hours after that. Now, physiology, science, a lot of backing does tell us that is a good amount of time for rest, if you will. It requires 12 hours is a nice time for healing to happen. We're talking about healing on all levels, cellular level, muscle level. That's also a time where when we're without food that time too, and in particular, hopefully a few hours before you go to bed, that you're allowing your body to get into that REM sleep, that really, really good restorative sleep. If we don't allow for that time, we're not going to hit those things that really make us feel energized in the morning. Because what happens then is that people are waking up and they're sluggish and they feel terrible, and then they're hitting the caffeine again, and then that's like the cycle just starts all over again. So again, nutshell version, I like when people have that kind of a fast, but that's the only kind of fast that I would recommend.
That's actually,
but you,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was gonna say, but you also, my experience, because I worked with you, you work with the differences. So I was a bit of a challenge because I'm a night runner. And so I don't like to get done until midnight.
Right.
And so you were able to kind of adapt for me, it wasn't ideally what you wanted me to be doing, but you knew I was going to be doing it. So you were able to kind of modify for me.
So what did you do different, Loretta? Because like, I'm even thinking of how I do it to me, and I'm a late nighter, and sometimes maybe it's a big mistake I'm making. Like, I don't get to eat till like 9 o'clock at night, and maybe I fall asleep at 11 o'clock. And, so I'm sounds like I got some adjusting to do. But what did you do, Loretta?
Well, see, mine was a little different because I was coming off a run at like midnight, and, I still needed to fuel. So for me, after a run, I don't really want to eat solids. So we were kind of able to work through with doing a bit more liquid nutrition, which I'm able to get down after a run. And that helped me working with Nicole because I gave myself the permission that some of the liquid things were okay. I was still, maybe making some yogurt shakes or, things, getting the stuff that I needed and getting calories and carbs and everything I needed right away. Because before, I probably would have just skipped that and maybe went to bed. I wouldn't have gotten what I needed.
Yeah.
So you needed that for recovery.
Right.
But then you also needed to go to sleep. And so the liquid made it easier to digest?
For me, it did, because after a long run, even if it's morning, noon, or night, I don't really have the desire to chew food. And so that was and my reason I went to Nicole is because, I'm doing these ultra endurance activities and I'm not getting in enough calories. I'm constantly burning more than I ever could possibly take in. So together we worked through, like, how can I get more in? And for me, that's what worked. It may not work for everybody, but that's what worked for me. And the other thing that was really valuable to me working with Nicole, because I've worked with other dietitians, but what I really valued was that she looked at not only what I was doing, but what I was eating. And I'm kind of a picky eater. So I have like a small repertoire of food that I like to eat. But she was able to take what I liked and just kind of expand it a little bit so that I didn't have to completely change what I was doing, but I was able to get in the nutrition that I needed. And it was easier for me to achieve, because I have had other people who came in and told me to eat all kinds of stuff that I would never eat. Right. And so, I could stick with it for maybe a month, but it wasn't really stuff that I really wanted to eat. And so I just would stop eating it, after a while, because it's not something I'm going to eat. So.
Yeah. And the thing about, and Loretta, that was so nicely said. The thing about the liquid nutrition too, that we were kind of working with, was not only the late night, but, there was always that hydration piece.
Yes.
And so it was such a great way to kind of double dose. And the other piece about the liquid or the shakes, smoothies, what we had you do is that it gets absorbed so much faster. So then the gut doesn't have to work, which means then that you still are able to get into that sleep that you need, right? That restorative, versus it digesting a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're getting up at 7 again, or, whenever you'd get up, which is sort of what you did, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And so there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity there for your body to get there, but that was another way of helping that process out.
Right.
Because
so she can work with challenging people.
Yeah.
So how did you feel, Loretta? Because I'm curious. So how long did you do this, and like, when did you see a result?
I think I saw a result within a few weeks. I don't think it took me very long to notice my energy level. I just used to think I was just tired. And then I started realizing it wasn't that I was tired. I just needed more calories. I was running out of calories, so that it made me tired. So I didn't get the actual hunger. And I think it was probably because I run so much that after a run, my stomach isn't ready to take in that food. And so then it just kind of started a cycle for me to not be able to eat much, because I didn't have that desire to eat. Like I didn't have like hunger associated with it. And so I felt more tired. And so when I started eating more, then I started realizing that I did have more energy once I put more calories in my body. So that made a difference. And then also trying to fuel before my run, we really worked on, so many hours before getting in liquid and food, and that made me a lot stronger on my runs. Things that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't talked to Nicole.
Yeah, that's great. I find it super interesting to hear from you, Loretta, that has went through it and seen, and I know you, I've heard from you that you saw great results, and then it's interesting to hear how it happened. And I'm also wondering, because I know, some people can be just so picky about what they eat, and they have to eat out a lot. So I know there was a time I had to eat out because I traveled. I'd travel for like 7 days in a row, and I was in a car, and it was impossible. I tried to pack food, and I tried to do coolers, but like you end up where you have to eat out. So like working with a dietitian, do you get help of how to eat out? Can you get help of how to do that well? And, do you get any tips for our listeners on that?
Yeah, again, if that's going to be part of your lifestyle, then we just have to make as best decision as we possibly can, you know? So again, it's still taking into consideration what you like, what you would typically do. And so I could be super basic and just wherever you go, if you can find a grilled something or other, that's a good start. If they have a veggie of any kind, grab it, even if it's just lettuce and tomato on, you know, whatever that sandwich is going to be. Ask them to put, you know, double, triple the amount on it, you know. But it depends. Like there's some places that surprisingly have some variety that you can actually work with. I find this might sound very bizarre, but working with Wendy's is actually a little easier because they have like the baked potato, they have the chili, they have milk, they have, you know, like they even their Frosty is like fine, like it's great. So like there's ways we can find balance in somewhat nutrition in some of these places that, you know, don't always have that. So yeah, there's definitely ways of going about that.
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
something
about
else that,
races as well, you know, traveling to races. So that's great ideas. But sorry, Loretta,
Yeah,
what
oh,
did you?
that's okay.
yeah,
I was going to say, I think something else that I kind of learned from Nicole, we talked a little bit about, you know, we, in our minds, I guess we have this mindset or a frame of what is good nutrition, and we
yeah,
categorize food as in good food and bad food.
right.
And that kind of can get you in a downward spiral. So for me, what would happen is, you know, you categorize the bad food. And so the next thing you know, I'm not eating anything, you know, I'm not getting in enough calories because that's what I want. And so, but I'm limiting myself because I don't think it's the best choice. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know we had conversations about that mindset.
Yeah, well, you know, and I find that that's a super common mindset, you know. So I find that a lot with athletes. I mean, athletes of all ages, I find that there's just this good and bad. Like everybody just wants to like find the category. And it is it's a really it's a toxic way of thinking because it limits you one way or another way, right? You're eating quote unquote this good stuff, but the good stuff doesn't have a whole lot of calories in it either, right?
Right.
And you're also super angry
Right.
because you're like, I want flavor. Right?
Yep.
You know, so we have to really look at like food is just simply fuel, period, for everybody. It's just that certain foods have maybe more fuel than others, or certain foods have more actual like vitamins than others. But we actually need and can use all of them. And in particular, when we're an athlete, you know, our body is operating on such a different level than, say, someone who isn't, you know? I mean, we just have to accept that too. We have a lot more mitochondria that's available that wants to shuttle energy where it needs to go. Like we have more demands on our body, we have more demands on our heart, we have more demands on our brain. Like we have more demands, period. So why are we choosing to restrict ourselves, right? And so it's important that we find that variety. It's important to find that, okay, these are the things that I really love that I know are maybe lower in like a nutritional level, like, you know, like vitamins and whatnot. There's still vitamins in some of this stuff. Let's understand that. So it's like, okay, great. I want all of this. Perfect. How are we going to add more nutrition to it? So it's really not necessarily always about taking away as it is sometimes adding and just sort of rebalancing.
Yes, I'm
And that's
thinking
really
like,
what Nicole did for me.
yeah, I'm thinking like potato. I feel like that's something that people take out of their diet. So then you talked about that at Wendy's, and then you can make it more healthy by adding some broccoli on it or something like that. Am I an A student with that?
Yeah. So you can take the right, exactly. So you can take that baked potato, you can add the broccoli, and you can add the chili, and you can have milk, and you could really have a great meal right there. I mean, if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I just know that a lot of people are like, oh, potatoes, they're bad. They, you know,
Oh
you
my
take them
gosh, that
out.
drives me crazy. So potatoes are amazing for us. Like major powerhouse, and I have nothing to do with the potato board, but the major nutrition powerhouse with like all B vitamins. I mean, the potassium alone is incredible, the magnesium alone is incredible. We actually get some vitamin D from it. I mean, it's amazing what a potato can do for us, and that also helps raise serotonin in our brain, which also helps cut down on that cortisol level. And as athletes, we have a lot of cortisol. So we've got to simmer it down, and we need help, and we need help from certain things that can actually help us do that. Convert B vitamins, convert what you take in into energy. Without your B vitamins, you're not converting efficiently. You're going to feel tired, or you're going to eat a lot of calories. But if you're not getting in those Bs, right, you're still going to feel really tired, right? So we cannot be afraid of the potato. And the best part is that they're great hot and they're amazing cold. And when they're cold, they actually have a completely different nutritional profile to them. So anyway, I could go on about that, but I won't. But it's so
That's
fun.
actually really interesting to me. I want to know, like, I had no idea that the potato was different hot than cold.
Yes. Okay. So hot would be, so it's different on how it's absorbed, and it's different with the nutrition profile as far as the type of starch it gives. So when it's cold, it's actually a resistant starch, and a resistant starch is actually food for our gut. It actually slows the release of everything into your bloodstream. It takes a lot to break down. So you're actually, burning calories in the process, if you will. Like you're utilizing energy. It's amazing. It still has all those other nutrients to it, but it's different as far as how it's getting broken down, and it's more of a prebiotic for your system. So I love chopping up like leftover cold potatoes in my salad. I usually have something big and like a big raw, vegetable type thing a day, at least one. And I love putting that in. It's incredible, especially if they've been roasted. So they've got all kinds of yummy stuff on it, and it's amazing cold. And then when they're warm, they just don't have the resistant starch, but they can also be more readily available energy too. So anyway, there's nothing wrong with the potato, and they're so high in fiber, whether they're hot or whether they're cold. I have a hard time understanding it. This is the other piece too, if I can just make mention, because we're talking about this and because this is so misunderstood. Is it okay, Michelle?
Yeah, oh, I love it.
Okay. So the thing that we have to remember, because it's so interesting. I just had a 16-year-old have this conversation with me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's starting so young. So the thing is that we have to remember that, this is another example of why things are not bad. When you have something that's considered bad, so let's say white potato, not bad at all, but a white potato, let's say white bread, right? People love to pick on the white stuff, right? Avoid the white stuff. This is what Annie and I do we're like, when we're doing our pod, we're just, you hear it. So at any rate, so the thing is that we're never just sitting down to a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
And maybe some of us are, but what I'm saying is that it's not that likely. We're not sitting down to 3 potatoes. No. What are we doing? We're putting something on that bread. We're eating that bread with something else. Same with the potato, right? So we have to understand that when we eat a mixed meal, all of a sudden this thing that is seen as quote unquote bad because of this whole glycemic thing, and I know that that's what it is, how fast it enters your bloodstream, enters the bloodstream super slow. It's not bad. It's not hurting you. It's not causing diabetes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not doing all of the things that people are thinking this is doing. That's the beauty of it. That's also the beauty of balance. That's what makes it so wonderful, that we get to have our cake and eat it too, especially if you couple it with some milk or or you had it with your meal. It's awesome. Again, your body can utilize it so much better. It doesn't create the inflammatory response. That's the beauty of it. And that's what I want people to know. People, eat your food. Eat food. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love your passion for food, and I'm totally going to be making like this big kale salad with roasted potatoes on it. That's such a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things.
Well, so Jeff Helgestad, he is asking about coffee and caffeine, difficulty losing. Let's see, how does too much coffee caffeine affect nutrient intake or difficulty losing a few pounds?
Love the question. So good. All right. So caffeine is kind of a doozy in general. So the thing about caffeine, and I'm sort of curious on what time of the day he consumes it and like how much and stuff like that. So just sort of throwing that out there because we have to kind of look at the patterns. So there's a couple of pieces to this. So caffeine in general, we can break a certain amount down in a day. The maximum amount in a day that we can break down without where it doesn't start affecting our nervous system and our brain, how our brain wants to function and other things, the list starts going on, is about say 325 milligrams, right? And so just to put that in perspective really quick, unfortunately, that can be like a venti coffee from like a Starbucks. So I'm just sort of showing you what that looks like, right? So you can kind of envision what that is. Okay. So the thing about it is that some people start off with a venti in the morning and then they need something at 2 because they're crashing. And then sometimes they even want something at dinner because they need to put in some more hours. This is where it can get really, really damaging in general. And the reason why is because caffeine is super stressful on the body. It requires a ton of B vitamins because B vitamins is the only thing that counteracts stress in our body. So it requires a lot of B vitamins to actually break down. If you're already depleted in Bs, you're not breaking that down real well. So that's going to cause an inflammatory response, which also then promotes cortisol. So when he talks about the connection between too much caffeine and potentially weight loss, the issue is when we have high cortisol, we can't burn body fat because the cortisol is so high and your body's trying to protect itself because it goes, we are stressed out of our mind. We won't let you burn if this is body fat. We will not let you cross this barrier to burn for energy. It refuses. And so when you have that happening all day, so people are walking around with that all day and you're not efficiently burning like you could be. So caffeine is super, super, super sensitive to work with in general. We have to be really, really careful with it. So a little goes a long way. So depending on how you feel you may need it, really studies hands down have shown positively that you don't receive any more benefit from having 80 milligrams of caffeine. So a lot of people think like, oh, more is better. I need, a big hit. No, because that 325 is going to affect your system just like 80 would. And so the issue comes in where people start getting really immune to it because they keep drinking so much of it where they're like, I need more, I need more, I need more in order to feel whatever it is that they want to feel. So that's when it starts really getting, crazy. The other issue with caffeine is that it has what they call a half-life. So we talked about the scenario earlier where we have 325 in the morning at 8:00, but we still have half of that in our system by the time we're getting that second cup. So if that makes sense to you, whatever half of 325 is, if we can do math real quick, what is that? 160 or something?
Yeah,
162.5. So we'll have 162.5 in our system at 2. And now we're adding more caffeine on at 2, which half of that is still going to be in our system by the time we want to try to go to bed. And now we expect to sleep and fall into REM sleep and recover. When we have that much stress hormone happening, it's not going to happen. And that's why people wake up super groggy and they have to repeat the cycle again because they don't know any other way, obviously,
So how do they break out of that cycle?
Well, that's the part. It's kind of a cold turkey. It's kind of okay, we're going to rehab. We're going to caffeine rehab here. Hang on. So usually what it is, it's a process. So whatever this gentleman is doing, I would encourage him to start with just breaking things down either by a third and then go to a half and then go to a quarter, until you're kind of at a reasonable level. So you are kind of like just trying to do a decline slowly. Usually for my high caffeine users, that's what we do, real slow.
So
Otherwise,
you
I'm
don't
like, get it out
let
of there.
them have a little, or would
Oh,
you
absolutely.
recommend? Okay.
Oh yeah, no. There's positively nothing wrong with it. And again, there's a time and a place for it. 80 milligrams of caffeine, say about 20 to 30 minutes before a workout, can really be a really nice ergogenic aid. But the issue is that we don't need any more than that. That's the thing. Like we don't need 150. And that's what the other thing with like a lot of these pre-workout powders and stuff like that drives me insane. They put like 100 to 150, some of them I've even seen 200 milligrams of caffeine. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's unnecessary. People are getting jacked up in their head, but I mean, it's unnecessary. And the caffeine numbs your pain, like the pain response. So yeah, they're doing reps and they're not feeling the shred in their biceps, It's awesome. Ay.
Yeah, and I came to Nicole. I'm a bit of a Coke addict, and she helped work that. We worked through that, and I got much better and came up with different things to kind of curb my craving. I think for Coke. So thinking about tart cherry juice over a can of Coke.
Yeah, which you're actually really enjoying now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because I also do caffeine, and it sounds like I need to back off on that for sure. I'm gonna give that a try. So what is the you should never say I'll give that a try. I'll do that. And so what is what did you do, Loretta? So iced cherry tart.
I started doing tart cherry juice. I'm not sure that's for everybody, but and it was timing too. It was right after a run, drinking the tart cherry juice, not drinking it all day long, although I could. But that was really the time. Yeah, I mean, because tart cherry juice has a lot more benefit than a can of Coke that I would really like afterwards.
Yeah.
So, switching over that and chocolate milk.
There you go.
Well, chocolate milk would have caffeine in it too. What, I'm just curious. What, is there any tea or something that you could have that doesn't have caffeine, or does all tea have caffeine?
Herbal teas don't have caffeine in it. And green tea is actually really super amazing for you. It's antimicrobial, it's antiviral. There's a lot of polyphenols in green tea as well. So again, you're getting just a lot of anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefit to it. Green tea has about the equivalent of 40 milligrams per cup. And what we also find in regards to green tea is that for some reason it's a gentler, I don't know why this is, but it's a gentler form of caffeine. And I'm not sure if it's because of how it enters the bloodstream, whereas coffee is maybe more of a hit and the green tea is more of a slow progression. So there's like this less stress, less stress effect on it. So I don't have clarity on that, why that is, but it's been proven.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try the green tea.
It's good. Yeah. I have it every day with my lunch, actually.
Another weird replacement I used was spinach, water, and lemon mixed up in the blender. And that took away my need to have Coke just because I had something different flavored, I guess. I don't know, weirdly, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I gave up diet soda, which, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I did. I think it's been 4 years ago, but I just went to water. And that was enough. But I guess I probably kind of went to coffee too. I just didn't really realize that I was going to coffee.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure my coffee intake's higher than it was when I was drinking diet soda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, look at that and see where you can, just swap a few things out or just cut back. But I was even thinking about herbal teas in general. You can brew them hot and then keep them cold. So then you can either, add that into your water or drink that in place of water too. And that's actually pretty tasty. There's a lot of them that are really flavorful, actually. So again, just something to consider.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Loretta. We got all this stuff in our head.
You can go, Michelle, because mine is kind of a little going off that topic. So
okay, well, I was gonna ask about water because that's every once in a while I just get so tired of drinking water, and I've got water here, but I put lime in it.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, when I get off, I'll just be stubborn about it for 3 weeks and I just don't feel like drinking enough water, and then I'll put lime in it. How much are we supposed to have?
Yeah, so technically it's about half your body weight in water in ounces a day, and then it's about 16 ounces of water per hour of activity. Now, when we're talking about, someone who is, say, an ultra, that gets a little bit more technical. We need a little bit more than that per se. But just on average, that's what we're looking at.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Mhm.
Okay, Loretta, like get us off now.
Okay, so I know you mentioned it before, but I'd like to highlight it because I think it's important for people thinking about maybe even hiring you as a dietitian through Ornery Mule.
Mhm.
Is that I have a health condition, and I was able to work with you and work through that. So I have a thyroid disorder, and I was able to actually give you my medical information. I was getting blood tests, and you were able to help me sort through that and kind of figure out what I need for my nutrition, as well as what I may need as far as maybe vitamins to supplement, my nutrition. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that was really valuable to me, because I get all of that information, but I don't always get what to do with it as far as my diet from my general physician. They're adjusting my medications, but they don't really lead me on the path to my nutrition.
Hmm. Yeah, well, that was one of the nice things to be able to do with you is that you had all that information, so we could really look into it. I think I even suggested to get a couple of different tests run,
Yep.
based on what we were experiencing, even too. So that was so nice that your team was able to just do that, per
Right.
the suggestion.
Yep.
Which was really nice. But yeah, I mean, that's also a benefit of an actual dietitian, because we understand those health states, and that is something that we have the ability to do. And that's kind of the piece too. I think a lot of times people will like this situation where people want to come to see me, say, to improve running, but then what we find is that we've got some other things going on too, that we don't have to address by all means, but we can address, which is really nice. And I think that that's also what makes it more encompassing, is the whole purpose sometimes of even looking at what you're currently doing, no matter what your goal is to seek balance for yourself. I think that's why people are often like, I feel like I've got to do something different. Okay, so let's work with that. You probably feel like you got to do something different because you feel a little out of balance, right? So we have to look at what can bring you back into balance. And that's what also understanding those other pieces, can help us do too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Loretta. That's really, really great point. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover? Because we do got the Ornery Meal Stubborn 5.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to have her share a little bit, but Nicole is our dietitian that you can hire for Ornery Mule, and there are a couple different packages. I don't know if you want to talk about the difference and how kind of to pick out what one would be right for you to get started.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Sure. um,
Put you
so
on the spot.
yeah, no problem. So yeah, so the tier packages. So the one is basically we're meeting each other, say, once a month, and then we're having communication throughout that month. So let's say we meet, we discover a couple of things that we want to work on, and then again, we can keep touching base through email or quick phone call or what have you.
And
So
you
that
can
would be
meet
one.
by Zoom, so you don't even have to be local to you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We're definitely meeting. Yeah, meeting by Zoom for sure. And then the second one, it really provides you. I feel it's a little bit more. It provides a little bit more because we have a chance then to have contact twice for for an amount of time, so we can dive in a little bit deeper depending on what it is that we're actually working on or looking at. So it's either one session a month or it's two sessions a month, and both of them provide the emails back and forth too. And I think that that's what's really important as well. In particular, it depends if you're looking to kind of if you're looking to make big changes, then it's important that we're actually speaking about it. And that's the thing too, because like so many people will they'll just kind of like not talk about certain things maybe, and then just decide like, well, you know um I can't do this, right? Or I can't do it, or I can't. And we've got to look at, wait a minute, what's kind of going on, and how can we help kind of you get unstuck in a sense too. And so when we're looking at making change, change isn't just like, oh, great, I'm just doing this now and la la la. It's like, nope, if it was that easy, we would all just be doing this now and yeah. But we don't, right? Because there are certain areas that we get a little stuck on. So the nice part about the double in a course of a month is that we get to really work on things together, essentially.
Thank you for describing that. I think the other thing for me and my experience with Nicole is that I came up with a strategy to write down what I was eating on a dry erase board, because that awesome. Made it so I could kind of see what I was doing, because sometimes I think I thought I was doing better or more or less, whatever. And then I was able to communicate through email by sending her pictures of my dry erase board of my meals. And she was able to say, okay, yeah. She was able to say like, yeah, that looks good. Or, maybe you could add this, or, that's perfect. And then, I could just kind of feel good about that I was on track, I guess, or if I needed to make some tweaks. So
yeah, and that you were able to do that right away. And I think that that's kind of the thing too. It's like, some people will just wait with that, like wait till the next month or wait until the next appointment, which who knows when that'll be. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we could have corrected that like right away, right?
Yep.
So it's good.
And it sounds to me like Loretta, like, and I think this is a really important thing when you're like you're training for a race and what you're doing, like running wise, but you learned how to do it. So working with Nicole helped you learn why you were doing it.
Yes. Yep. I understood better why I was doing what I was doing. I didn't have to make huge life changes. I was still able to eat the things that I like, minus the Coke. I mean, I slowed down on that a little bit. I still have some.
Oh yeah.
And I do better some days than others, but still I'm aware of, what changes I need to make. So it's a hard habit to break.
Yeah.
Especially when you go to these darn ultra races and the aid stations have Coke.
But like you said, it just goes down so easy.
It does. It's delicious.
Again, there's a time and a place for it. And sometimes that can work out. There's not a problem at all.
Right. Yeah. But, I learned that one thing was that it was really dehydrating me before a run. If I were to have it at, let's say, lunch, and then I was going to run in the afternoon, and tried to learned about timing a little bit too, I think, of everything I was taking in. So, yeah.
The timing is so critical. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think working with Nicole has been really helpful in what I eat day to day, but also thinking about my fueling for my race day during my runs. We talked, like she mentioned, about water and how much hydration that I needed during runs, because I was severely shorting myself what I needed. And that was one thing I didn't mention earlier when we were talking about my nutrition change. During my runs, increasing my hydration and my fueling made a world of difference, and how I felt during my run and how I recovered. I recovered much quicker than if I came off a run, not realizing that I was as dehydrated as I was. So
sure. Mm-hmm.
I think that Coach Loretta should mention what you're training for right now and how you're going to use this. Great.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I might need to be calling you again, Nicole.
Yes.
So my next event is Desert Solstice on December 12th, and it's a 24-hour race. So it will be my longest run, actually. So it will be interesting how I can keep up with my nutrition, my hydration, and it's also in Phoenix, Arizona. So it also adds another component to that, and making sure I'm up on my hydration. So awesome. So I may need a plan.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, so Connie Newnham has a really great compliment for you, so I feel like I better read this. It says, nobody should follow a one-size-fits-all. Nicole is so in tune. We all need something different to perform better. Yes, such good information, fascinating, and there's lots of explanation points. So,
very nice. Thank you so much. Very kind.
And then Bill Fitz says, I agree.
So this might be a good time to do a shout out. Connie is also one of our Ornery Mule athletes. Yay. And this weekend she finished her first 100-mile race.
Oh, awesome.
And And on the way to her 100, she hit 100K PR by 2 hours, 25 minutes. So way to go, Connie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great job. Yeah, she's been really fun to watch. She's worked hard all year long and so dedicated. She works with Coach Loretta. And yeah, we absolutely love Connie.
It's great.
Well,
So
we
is it
want to
time
get
for
to
the
know a little bit
stubborn five?
more. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's time for the stubborn five.
All right. So you can answer these nicely or orneryly, however you want.
Oh, I like options.
All right. So our first question is share one thing about you that people may not know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really funny. Again, it's a food thing just because it just popped into my head and I was just seeing something before we went up. And so I think it planted a seed. I love making cookie bars out of old cereal.
Interesting.
Yes. It's really fun. And my husband really enjoys it, actually. So I love experimenting with things. And so he always has cereal around. And I'm like, hey, is that you done with that? Because I want to play. I want to make something. And so it's always fun to see what kind of creation will come out of it. So anyway.
I love that. I love that. You know, that's how I can't remember what bar it is, but one of the bars, Lara bars, I think that's how they were designed, is just kind of somebody playing around with an idea in their kitchen.
Yeah.
Developed these Lara bars and presented them to like a Whole Foods or something. And that's how it started. So
Right.
you never know, you could have day old cereal bars.
Right. Cocoa Puff bars. Awesome. Or whatever.
All right. So the next question is, what is something in your life that you're looking forward to? Do you have anything coming up?
Oh, wow. Let's see, something that I'm looking forward to. It's really interesting because I think that, we have all had an interesting year, kind of a challenging year. And I feel like this year holidays are going to be extra quiet. And to be honest, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to really slowing that down. And I'm looking forward to making some kind of rich moments happen. Do you know what I mean? Like I really want to get into just being in holiday mode around here and making it really special with my husband and I. So I'm actually really looking forward to that.
Nice. That sounds nice. Nice and relaxing.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. What is your favorite hobby?
Oh, favorite hobby. Well, I'm a dancer. And so that has been very challenging because that hasn't happened, obviously. I think the last event I was at was, I think, in February. So I realize how much I really miss that.
Right.
But otherwise, if I'm not, I'm a mover. So I'm very active. I love to be outside in nature. I love baking, as you sort of just kind of got a glimpse of. And I love reading as well. So.
Nice. What kind of dancer?
So classically trained, but currently focusing on Argentine tango.
Okay. Michelle's son is also a dancer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a ballet dancer, but he also focuses on modern dance.
Oh, very cool. Yes, I love all of that. Yeah, have done all of that. It's great. Super cool. Yeah.
All right. Let's go on to question number 4. Who was the biggest influence in your life?
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Great question. Oh my gosh. Okay. So like 4 people came to mind. First person ever that I think had an imprint on me when I'm thinking about like what I do now is a babysitter of mine, Krista. Second person was Lou Retton. Oh my gosh, loved her to pieces. She literally was like my idol. And then I would say that my aunt is also very influential on me and where I have, what I have become. So.
Right. Wow. Some great influences in your life. And Mary Lou Retton, that might date you a little bit.
It might date me a little bit. I was a tiny tot.
Okay. We'll go with that.
So if people are like, wait, who is that? She's a gymnast, because I was also a gymnast as well. So yes, loved her.
All right, and we've talked a lot about food. Now we're gonna just let you just be honest here. What's your favorite treat for a job well done?
Oh, well, I eat chocolate every day. So and that's like it has to be chocolate. It's so funny because like with desserts, I have no interest if there's fruit in there. Get it? I don't want fruit in my dessert because I don't see that as dessert. Don't want anything to do with it. It's got to be chocolate, super gooey, like something with a really good texture, like an undercooked brownie. Yes, that's what I'm talking
Nice.
about.
That was one other thing I really liked about working with Nicole was I also like dark chocolate, and she would see my meals, and almost everything had like dark chocolate sprinkled on it.
Off. I know, like your oatmeal, which is amazing, by
Dark
the
chocolate.
way. But that works. Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. That was the Ornery Meal Stubborn 5, and you made it
super
through
fun
with flying colors.
Thank you. Awesome.
So I guess next up would just be to thank our Patreons. And that's a new page that we have. We're about a month in on that. We share some behind the scenes stuff. So we have kind of an after show after we get done, and we learned some pretty cool stuff after that. And so we've been sharing that on our Patreon page. And thank you everybody for the support of that and the growth in the show. We've doubled from last month what we were, and we really appreciate everybody listening. And we wanted to give a shout out also to a few of our listeners. David Benson, he ran Hennepin 100 solo. So he was signed up for the race. It was canceled because of COVID. And he went out and ran the course on his own in just over 24 hours, which is insane without like the energy of the aid station. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that. And then if anybody wants to stick around, we have Mike Anderson on at 7 tonight. And he has won Detroit Marathon, top finisher at Mohican 100. And he's a coach at Ornery Mule Racing too. So really should be a great show. And thank you everyone for listening.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye everyone.
All right, bye.